The sound of the shredder echoed through the empty corridor like a warning. It was 2:47. In the morning, when James heard it, he'd been a palace guard for 8 months, long enough to know that nothing good happened in the archives at this hour. The hallway stretched before him, dark except for a thin line of light bleeding from under the door at the end. His radio crackled. "North wing clear," a voice said. James pressed the button. Checking the archives. Heard something. The shredder's mechanical whine grew louder as he approached. Through the frosted glass, he could see a shadow moving frantically. Someone was destroying documents. His hand moved to his belt, fingers brushing the radio. Protocol said to call it in immediately, but something stopped him. The shadow behind the glass moved differently than an intruder would. No hesitation. No looking over their shoulder. This was someone who belonged here, doing something they desperately didn't want anyone to see. James pushed the door open slowly. The woman at the shredder spun around, and his breath caught. Margaret Chen. 30 years she'd worked in the palace. 30 years of impeccable service. Organizing state documents, managing correspondence. A fixture so reliable that people joked she was part of the furniture. Her face was streaked with tears. "Don't," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Please don't report this." The shredder continued its relentless grinding behind her. Papers covered the desk, some already torn, others waiting their turn for destruction. James saw official seals, the kind that marked documents as permanent records. "Margaret, what are you doing?" He stepped into the room, letting the door close behind him. She turned back to the shredder, feeding another document into its teeth. "What I was told to do. At 3 in the morning? Destroying palace records." James moved closer, trying to see what was being destroyed. "This is serious." I know what this is." Her voice cracked. She grabbed the edge of the desk, steadying herself. When she looked at him again, her eyes were red and desperate. "You think I don't know? 30 years, James. 30 years I've protected these documents. Do you think this is easy for me?" The shredder jammed. Margaret made a sound between a sob and a laugh, yanking at the half-destroyed paper caught in the teeth. "Even the machine doesn't want me to do this." James reached past her and switched it off. The sudden silence felt heavy. "Who told you to do this?" he asked quietly. Margaret's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the desk. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, barely above a whisper, "Camilla." The name hung in the air between them. James felt his stomach drop. "The Queen Consort told you to destroy official documents?" "Not just told me." Margaret's voice was hollow now, emptied of emotion. She gave me a list. Specific files. Said it was urgent. Said it was necessary. Said if I valued my position, I would do it tonight and tell no one. She gestured at the scattered papers. "These aren't just any documents, James. These are records from before the coronation. Correspondence. Meeting notes. Things that could." She stopped herself. "Things that could... what?" Margaret looked at him, and in her eyes he saw something that terrified him more than any intruder could. Fear. Deep. Genuine fear. "Things that could change everything," she said. "Before you go. If you're enjoying this story, hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happens next." James looked at the papers on the desk. One caught his eye, partially torn. He could make out a date from 18 months ago, a name he recognized. And then Margaret's hand shot out, covering it. "Just walk away. Pretend you never saw this. I have grandchildren, James. I have a pension 8 months away. Don't make me choose between doing what's right and protecting my family." The shredder sat silent between them. Outside, footsteps echoed in the distant corridor. Another guard on patrol. Coming closer, James had seconds to decide what happened next. James grabbed Gret's arm and pulled her toward the storage closet. "What, are you quiet?" He shoved the door open, pushing her inside just as the footsteps stopped outside the archives. He followed, pulling the door nearly closed, leaving just a crack to see through. The archives door opened. Wilson, the senior guard, stepped inside. His flashlight swept across the room, landing on the shredder, the scattered papers, the chaos Margaret had left behind. "Command, this is Wilson. We've got a situation in the archives. Documents everywhere. Shredders still warm. Pause. No one's here. Looks like they left in a hurry." In the darkness of the closet, Margaret's breathing was ragged against James's shoulder. He could feel her trembling. Wilson's radio crackled with a response James couldn't hear. "Then copy that. Sealing the room now." "Yes, sir. I'll wait for the supervisor." The door closed. The lock clicked. They were trapped. Margaret pulled away from James, her voice sharp with panic. "What did you do?" "Now we're both. I bought us time to think." James pulled out his phone, using the dim light to see her face. "Margaret, I need you to tell me the truth. All of it. What's in those documents?" She sank against the shelves, sliding down until she sat on the floor. In the phone's pale glow, she looked every one of her 58 years. "You should have let them find me alone. It's too late for that now." A bitter laugh escaped her. "I tried to warn them. 6 months ago I tried. Do you know what it's like to watch something terrible coming and be powerless to stop it?" "What's coming?" Margaret was silent for so long James thought she wouldn't answer. Then, quietly, a scandal. One that goes back years. Long before the coronation, back when Charles was still married to Diana. James felt cold. "What kind of scandal?" "The kind that involves money. Lots of it. Money that went places it shouldn't have gone, to people it shouldn't have reached." She wrapped her arms around herself. "I found it by accident last year. I was archiving old correspondence, and I saw patterns. Payments disguised as charitable donations. Meetings that weren't in official records. Letters that referenced deals that never appeared in any ledgers. And Camilla was involved? Not then. Maybe not even now, not directly." Margaret's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "But she knows about it. And more importantly, she knows that someone has been investigating. Someone close to the family, asking questions, requesting old files. Who? I don't know. That's what terrifies me. The orders came through her private secretary last week. She wanted specific files pulled. I was told to review them, catalog them for historical purposes." Margaret made a bitter sound. "I've worked here long enough to know what that means. They were checking to see what still existed. What evidence could hurt them?" James tried to process this. Outside the closet, he could hear more footsteps. More guards arriving. They were running out of time, so tonight, she ordered you to destroy them. 3 hours ago, her secretary called my personal phone. Said the Queen Consort needed a favor. Said it was urgent. Said it concerned the security of the family. Margaret's voice broke again. She said I was the only one she could trust. That my loyalty to the crown was being tested. That's not loyalty, Margaret. That's obstruction. I know. The words burst from her. You think I don't know. But what was I supposed to do? Say no to the Queen Consort. Risk everything I've worked for. My pension isn't just money, James. It's my daughter's cancer treatments. It's keeping my grandson in the school that's helping with his autism. She stopped, pressing her hands to her face. James crouched down beside her. What else did she tell you? That if anyone found out, if anything leaked, she would deny everything. That I would be the one blamed for destroying records. That 30 years of service wouldn't matter. Out. Margaret looked at him, her eyes glistening. She made it very clear that I was expendable. Outside, voices rose. James heard his name. Guard Miller was assigned to this corridor, someone said. He called in that he heard something. Where is he? Margaret grabbed James's wrist. You need to turn me in. Say you found me. Say you stopped me. Save yourself. And let you take the fall for something they forced you to do? I chose to do it. I fed those papers into the shredder myself. Under duress. Under threat? James stood, his mind racing. Margaret, did you destroy everything on the list? She hesitated. Almost everything. Almost. There were 3 files I couldn't find. They should have been in the archives, but they were already missing. Her voice changed, became thoughtful despite her fear. I told her secretary they must have been moved years ago, during a reorganization. But that's not true. What do you mean? I mean, someone else took them recently, within the last month. Margaret stood, facing him in the darkness. Someone else knows what's in those files. Someone got to them first. The door handle to the archives rattled. Keys jingled, which means James said slowly, "We're not the only ones digging into this."
Which means?
Margaret whispered. "We're not the only ones in danger." The archives door swung open. Light flooded in, and James realized with sudden, terrible clarity that they had much bigger problems than being discovered in a closet. James pressed his hand over Margaret's mouth as footsteps entered the archives. Through the crack in the closet door, he watched 3 figures move through the room, not palace guards. These men wore dark suits, moved with military precision, and one of them carried a leather briefcase. "Clear the room," the man with the briefcase said. His accent was crisp, expensive. "I want every paper photographed before we move them," Wilson's voice, uncertain. "Sir, I was told to secure the scene, for your orders have changed." The man didn't even look at him. "This is now a matter of Crown security. You and your men will wait outside. But the missing guard will be found.
Now leave."
The door closed behind the guards. Margaret's eyes were wide with terror against James's palm. He slowly removed his hand, and they both watched in silence. The suited man opened his briefcase on the desk. Inside, James glimpsed equipment he recognized from training: document scanner, encrypted tablet, evidence bags. This wasn't a cleanup crew. This was professional intelligence gathering. "Everything's still here," one of the other men said, sifting through papers. She didn't finish. Careless. The briefcase man's voice was cold. "I told them Chen was a liability. 30 years of service doesn't mean loyalty, it means leverage. It means vulnerability." He pulled out his phone, typed something, waited, then he lifted it to his ear. "Ma'am, we have the situation contained. Yes, most were destroyed, but we've secured the remainder." A pause. "No, ma'am, Chen is not here. Neither is the guard who discovered her." Another pause. Longer. "We're handling it. By morning, this will be resolved." Margaret's hand found James's in the darkness. She was shaking so hard he thought she might collapse. The man continued. "The 3 missing files are the priority. If someone else has them, we need to know who, and we need them retrieved." Before he stopped. Listened. "I understand. Nothing can compromise the coronation anniversary next week. The timing would be catastrophic." He ended the call and turned to his companions. "Photograph everything. Then I want this room sanitized. No trace, and find Chen and the guard. They don't leave this building." The men worked with frightening efficiency. The flash of a camera lit the crack in the closet door repeatedly. James felt Margaret flinch with each burst of light. 10 minutes. That's all it took for them to document and pack every remaining shred of evidence. The suited man sealed his briefcase with a decisive click. "Let's move." And someone checked that closet. James's heart stopped. Footsteps approached. The closet door handle began to turn. Margaret squeezed his hand so tight it hurt. Then a phone rang. The footsteps stopped. "Sir, it's the private secretary. Says it's urgent." A frustrated sigh. "Everyone out. Now. We'll do a full sweep after I take this call." The door closed. Silence fell. But this time it was different. This time James knew they had maybe 2 minutes before those men came back. "We have to run," he whispered. "Run where?" "They'll lock down the building. They'll find us." Margaret's voice was defeated. "It's over, James. We're caught in something so much bigger than the service tunnels." She looked at him. "What? The old service tunnels? From when the palace had coal deliveries? They're sealed off now, but there's an access point in this corridor." James had studied the building's layout during training. They don't use them anymore, but they're still there. Even if we get to the tunnels, they lead nowhere. They were bricked up years ago, not all of them. James remembered a conversation with one of the maintenance staff. Old Eddie, the groundskeeper, he told me they left one open for drainage. Said sometimes homeless people got in through it before they installed the grating. That was 20 years ago. It's still our best chance. James moved to the closet door, listening. Silence from the archives. The suited men were in the corridor. He could hear their muted voices through the walls. We go now, or we don't go at all. 8. Margaret was quiet for a moment. Then, if we run, we can never come back. They'll call us thieves, traitors. Everything I've worked for is already gone. James turned to face her in the darkness. Margaret, you heard him. They're going to handle us. That's not a conversation. That's not an investigation. I know what that is. Her voice was suddenly clear, steady. 30 years of palace service had taught her how to read between carefully chosen words. My daughter. They'll go after my daughter, not if we get out and find someone who can help. Someone outside their control. James opened the closet door a crack. The archives were empty. But we need those 3 missing files. If we can find them, if we can prove what's happening, I know who has them. James froze. What? I know who took them. Margaret stepped past him, her fear transforming into something else. Determination. What? And if we're going to survive this, if we're going to protect my family and expose what's really happening, we need to reach him before they do. Who? Margaret picked up a torn piece of paper from the floor, one the suited men had missed. She held it up to the dim light bleeding in from the corridor. James could see a name, handwritten in elegant script. Prince Edward's private aide, she said quietly. He's been investigating this for months. And 3 weeks ago, he told me he had evidence that could bring down half the palace administration. Then why hasn't he? Because 2 weeks ago, he disappeared. Margaret folded the paper, tucked it into her pocket. And nobody's asking why. Outside, footsteps returned. The suited men were coming back. James grabbed Margaret's hand and pulled her toward the door. They had one chance. One moment while the corridor was clear, while the guards were posted at the entrances, while the suited men were still in the wrong room, they ran. Behind them, a shout, then an alarm. The palace woke up around them. And James knew with absolute certainty that nothing would ever be the same again. Asterisk, the service tunnels smelled like centuries of darkness and decay. James pulled the metal grate, closed behind them just as flashlight beams swept across the corridor above. Their footsteps echoed in the narrow passage, water dripping somewhere in the distance. Margaret pressed close behind him, her breathing harsh in the confined space. Keep moving, he whispered. They'll figure out where we went. The tunnel sloped downward. James used his phone light, keeping it dim, pointing it at the ground. The walls were old brick, crumbling in places, covered in moss where water had seeped through. This part of the palace was from another era, when servants moved invisibly through the building, when royalty never saw the machinery that kept their world running smoothly. James. Margaret's voice was tight. I can't do this. I'm not built for running through tunnels in the dark. You're doing fine. He found her hand, pulled her forward. Just stay with me. They moved through the darkness for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. The tunnel branched several times. James chose paths based on instinct and half-remembered conversations with Eddie the groundskeeper. Left where the air felt fresher, right where water pooled on the floor, meaning they were moving toward drainage. Finally, they reached a wider chamber. Old coal chutes led upward, and there blessed sight, a newer-looking grate with light filtering through. That's it. James approached carefully. Through the grate, he could see pavement. A street. The outside world. Eddie said this one was still open for maintenance access. He pushed. The grate didn't budge. Pushed harder. Nothing. It's locked, Margaret said flatly. It's stuck. James examined the edges, found old hinges, rust, years of neglect. He braced his feet and shoved with everything he had. Metal groaned. Something cracked. The grate shifted an inch. Behind them, distant voices echoed in the tunnel. Someone had found their trail. James and Margaret both grabbed the grate now. It's pulling, pushing, desperation, giving them strength. The metal shrieked. The grate gave way suddenly, sending them both stumbling out onto cold pavement. They were in a narrow alley behind the palace. 4:23 in the morning. The city still mostly asleep. Margaret started laughing. It was the sound of someone breaking. We did it. We need to keep moving. They'll have people searching outside within minutes. Where are we going? You said Prince Edward's aide had evidence. You said he disappeared 2 weeks ago? James led her toward the end of the alley. Where would he have hidden the files? I don't know. He was paranoid, said he trusted no one inside the palace. Margaret was catching her breath, her mind clearly working. But he did tell me something. The week before he vanished, he said if anything happened to him, if he couldn't be reached, I should look in the place where Edward keeps his mother's memory alive. What does that mean? I don't know. I thought he was being dramatic, that nothing would actually. She stopped walking. Oh God, what? Diana's memorial garden. Edward visits every year on her birthday. He's the only one of the brothers who still does it religiously. Margaret grabbed James's arm. There's a bench there. Diana's favorite spot. Edward had it restored. He told me once that it was the only place in London where he felt she was still with him. James pulled out his phone, searching for the location. It's 20 minutes by car. We'll never make it on foot before they lock down the area. Need to get there before they do. Margaret looked at him. If those files are hidden there, if that's what he meant, we have to reach them first. A car turned into the street. James pulled Margaret back into the shadows, but it wasn't a police car. Just an early morning delivery van. It passed without slowing. We need help, James said. Someone we can trust. Someone outside the palace system. There is no one. Margaret's voice was hollow. Don't you understand? If this goes as high as I think it does, if the queen consort herself is involved, then everyone in any position of power is either complicit or controlled. Judges, police chiefs, politicians, the crown's influence touches everything. Then we find someone with nothing to lose. James was thinking fast. A journalist. Someone who's already on the outside. Someone who'd risk everything for a story this big. And what journalists would believe us? A palace archivist and a guard, no evidence, no files, claiming the queen consort ordered a cover-up? Margaret shook her head. They'd think we were insane. Not if we bring them proof. James pointed toward the memorial garden's location on his phone. Not if we bring them those 3 files. Margaret was quiet for a moment. Then there's one person. A reporter who wrote about palace finances last year. She got close to something, too close. They threatened her with legal action, shut down her investigation. She looked at James. Her name is Sarah Chen. She's my niece. Your niece. Why do you think I was so careful all these years? Why I documented everything, kept records, made copies? Margaret's expression was hard now. I saw things, James. Small things over 30 years. Money moving in strange ways. Meetings that didn't make sense. People who asked questions getting transferred or fired. I didn't have the full picture, but I knew something was wrong. You told your niece. I gave her hints, directions to look, names to research. Margaret started walking, purpose in her stride now. She's smart, careful. If anyone can help us, it's her. But we need those files first. They moved through the awakening city. Streetlights flickered off as dawn approached. Somewhere behind them, sirens wailed. The palace security net was spreading. James kept them to back streets, moving fast, but not running. Running drew attention. They needed to be invisible. Why did you really stop me? Margaret asked suddenly. In the archives. You could have called it in immediately, followed protocol, stayed safe. James thought about that. My dad was a guard at Buckingham Palace. 35 years. He saw things too. Things that didn't sit right. But he never spoke up because he was afraid of losing everything. He looked at her. He died last year, and one of the last things he told me was that his biggest regret was choosing silence over truth. He made me promise I wouldn't make the same choice. And here you are, throwing away your career after 8 months. Here I am, James agreed. They reached the memorial garden as the sun began to rise. The gates were still locked, but the fence was low. They climbed over, dropped into the carefully maintained grounds. The bench was exactly where Margaret remembered. Simple stone, with a plaque bearing Diana's name and dates. Flowers lay around it, some fresh, some wilting. People still came to remember her. Now what? James looked around. Where would someone hide files here? Margaret approached the bench slowly. She ran her hand along the stone, examining it. Edward had it specially made. Commissioned it himself, paid for it out of his own funds. She knelt, feeling underneath. Her fingers found something. A small cavity, weatherproofed, invisible unless you knew to look. Inside was a waterproof envelope. Margaret pulled it out with shaking hands. Inside were 3 files, thin but official-looking. Royal seals on the documents, and a handwritten note. James read over her shoulder. Margaret, if you're reading this, then I'm already gone. These are copies. The originals are safe, but only I know where. What you're holding is proof of financial manipulation dating back 20 years. Charitable funds redirected. Foreign accounts. Payoffs to silence scandals. It implicates not just staff, but family members. Real names. Real crimes. I couldn't risk keeping these at the palace. Couldn't risk digital copies. They're watching everything. Everyone. If I disappear, take these to Sarah Chen, only her. Make the story public before they can bury it. And Margaret Time, sorry for putting this on you, but someone has to tell the truth. Edward's aide, Thomas Wright. Margaret stood, clutching the envelope. We have it. We actually have the proof. Then we need to move. Your niece, where is she? She has an office in Camden. We can a voice cut through the morning air. Step away from the bench. They turned. The suited man from the archives stood at the garden entrance. He wasn't alone. 4 men with him, fanning out, blocking any escape. You've caused quite a bit of trouble, the man said, walking toward them. But it ends here. Give me the envelope, and we can all go home. James stepped in front of Margaret. What did you do to Thomas Wright? The man smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Mr. Wright is currently enjoying an extended vacation in Scotland. He's reconsidering his position regarding certain allegations. The smile disappeared. The envelope. Now, and if we refuse, then you'll join Mr. Wright in his reconsideration. Though I'm afraid his accommodations are quite isolated. No phones, no internet, no way to contact the outside world. The man pulled out his phone. I have a call to make to the Queen Consort. I can tell her this situation is resolved peacefully, or I can tell her it required more permanent measures. Your choice. Margaret gripped James's shoulder. It's over, she whispered. We can't fight them all. But James was looking past the suited man, toward the garden entrance, where a woman with a camera stood, filming everything, and next to her, a news van, satellite dish extending toward the sky. The suited man's face went white when he saw the camera. Sarah. Margaret's voice rang out across the garden. Everything. Film everything. The woman with the camera was already moving closer, her lens trained on the suited men. Behind her, more people emerged from the news van. A sound technician. A producer. All of them capturing every moment. You're filming on private property, the suited man said, his voice tight. This is a public memorial garden. Sarah Chen's voice was clear, confident. She held up her press credentials. And you're threatening a 60-year-old woman in a palace guard? I'm Sarah Chen, BBC Investigative Unit. Would you like to explain to our viewers what's happening here? The man's hand moved toward his phone, but he hesitated. Too many witnesses now. Too many cameras. Whatever he'd been ordered to do quietly had just become very public. Turn those cameras off. Not a chance. Sarah kept filming. Margaret, are you hurt? Are you here under duress? They're trying to silence us. Margaret held up the envelope. We have evidence of financial crimes, corruption, going back 20 years. They've been covering it up, destroying records, threatening anyone who asks questions. The suited man's companions shifted uncomfortably. This was spiraling out of their control. She's confused, the man said smoothly, addressing the camera now. Mrs. Chen, is a valued palace employee who's been under tremendous stress. She's making wild accusations. I have documents. Margaret pulled papers from the envelope. Financial records, names, account numbers, proof that money was diverted from royal charitable trusts into private accounts. Proof that scandals were covered up with payoffs funded by the crown. Those are classified documents. You're stealing. I was ordered to destroy them. Margaret's voice broke. By the Queen Consort herself. 3 hours ago, I received orders to shred specific files, to eliminate evidence before someone could investigate. And when I couldn't finish, they sent men like you to clean up the mess. Sarah's camera swung to the suited man. Is that true? Are you acting on behalf of the royal household? The man said nothing. But his silence was answer enough. James stepped forward. There's more. A man named Thomas Wright, Prince Edward's private aide. He disappeared 2 weeks ago after investigating these same irregularities. They're holding him somewhere, keeping him silent. These are serious allegations, Sarah said, still filming. Can you prove any of this? Margaret held up the files. Everything's here. Thomas documented it all before they took him. Financial transfers disguised as charitable donations. Meeting minutes that were never officially recorded. Communications between palace officials and foreign accounts. Her hands trembled. And evidence that when people got too close to the truth, they were removed. Quietly. Permanently. The suited man took a step forward. You're making a terrible mistake. The only mistake was made by people who thought they were above the law. Sarah moved between him and Margaret, her camera still rolling. These allegations will be investigated properly, publicly. And if you try to stop us, that becomes part of the story too. You have no idea what you're interfering with. The man's professional mask was cracking. This isn't about corruption. This is about protecting the institution. About preventing a scandal that could damage the monarchy itself. Maybe it should be damaged. James spoke quietly, but everyone heard him. If it's built on lies and cover-ups, if it protects criminals because they wear crowns. The man's phone rang. He answered it, turning away, speaking in low, urgent tones. When he faced them again, his expression had changed. Harder, more desperate. I've been authorized to make you an offer. All of you. He looked at Margaret, then James, then Sarah. Walk away now. Destroy those files. Say nothing. In return, Mrs. Chen keeps her pension and her job. Mr. Miller receives a transfer to a prestigious position with double his current salary. And Miss Chen, he looked at Sarah, your news organization receives exclusive access to palace events for the next 5 years. Interviews, footage, stories your competitors would kill for. You're trying to bribe us? Sarah's voice was incredulous. On camera? I'm trying to offer you a path forward that doesn't end in ruin for everyone involved. The man's voice was cold now. Because the alternative is that your careers are destroyed. Your reputations shattered. Every mistake you've ever made, every secret you've ever kept, will be exposed and weaponized against you, including my daughter's medical records. Margaret's voice was hard. Will you leak those too? Make her suffer because her mother told the truth? The man said nothing. I've been silent for 30 years, Margaret continued. Watching, documenting, hoping someone else would be brave enough to speak up. But no one ever did. Because people like you made sure of it. Well, I'm done being silent. She turned to Sarah. Everything in these files is yours. Publish it. All of it. Let the world see what's been hidden. Sarah reached for the envelope, but James caught her arm. Wait, everyone looked at him. If we release this now, they'll discredit us before anyone can verify the documents. They'll call them forgeries. They'll say we fabricated everything. James looked at the suited man. But if we find Thomas Wright first, if we bring him back alive and let him testify to what he discovered, then they can't deny it. Then we have a living witness, not just papers. You'll never find him, the man said. He could be anywhere, but you know where he is. James stepped closer. And here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell us? On camera. Right now. Because if you don't, we release these files immediately, and then you become the face of this scandal. The man caught threatening witnesses on film. The one who confirmed everything by trying to bribe us? Suited man's jaw clenched. I'm following orders? From who? The Queen Consort? Palace officials. Foreign interests? James pressed. Because whoever's giving you orders is about to throw you away. You're the one on camera. You're the one with no protection. And when this breaks, they'll deny they ever knew you. The morning birds sang in the trees. Traffic hummed in the distance. The camera kept rolling. Highland House, the man finally said, his voice barely audible. Near Inverness. It's a private estate owned by a shell company. That's where they're keeping, right? Who authorized his detention? The man looked at Margaret. You already know. Margaret closed her eyes. Camilla, not directly. She doesn't give direct orders. She mentions problems, expresses concerns. And people like me understand what's expected. The man's shoulders sagged. She's been cleaning house since the coronation. Anyone who might be a threat. Anyone with knowledge of the old deals, the old scandals. Wright wasn't the first, and he won't be the last. Sarah's hands were shaking as she filmed. This was bigger than any of them had imagined. You need to understand something, the man continued. This doesn't end with exposing a few financial crimes. What's in those files connects to arms deals, to foreign governments, to intelligence operations. You pull this thread, and the entire fabric unravels. You'll make enemies in every major power structure in Europe, good Margaret said simply. The man looked at her for a long moment. Then he gestured to his companions. Let them go, sir. Our orders are about to change drastically. He pulled out his phone. I need to make some calls. Starting with my lawyer. As the suited men walked away, Sarah lowered her camera. What just happened? We just became the biggest story in Britain, James said. And the most wanted people in the country. Margaret clutched the envelope to her chest. What do we do now? Sarah was already on her phone, calling her editor. Now we go loud. We release everything. We contact every news organization simultaneously. We make this too big to contain or bury. She looked at James. And you two need to disappear until we can verify Wright's location and get authorities involved. Real authorities, not ones connected to the palace. Where do we go? I know a place. A safe house my organization uses for protected sources. Sarah ended her call, looking at them both seriously. But you need to understand, once we do this, there's no going back. Your lives will never be normal again. You'll always be the people who challenged the crown. James looked at Margaret. She met his eyes and nodded. Then let's make sure it's worth it, she said. The story broke at 6:47 that morning, by 7 o'clock. It was on every news channel in Britain. By 8 o'clock, it had gone global. James watched it unfold from Sarah's safe house, some modest flat in East London that no one would think to look. Margaret sat beside him, her face pale as she saw her own image on the screen, holding up the documents in the memorial garden. Former palace archivist alleges royal cover-up. The headline read, 30-year veteran claims Queen Consort ordered destruction of financial records. The phone call started immediately. Sarah's editor. Legal teams. Government officials demanding to see the evidence. Palace representatives issuing carefully worded denials that only made them sound more guilty. They're saying I had a nervous breakdown, Margaret said quietly, watching herself on the news. That I've been unstable for months. They're desperate. Sarah was on her laptop, coordinating with journalists across the country, which means we're on to something real. If this was just the ravings of an unstable employee, they'd ignore it. Instead, they're in full damage control. James's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stay quiet and you live. Keep talking and your family pays. He showed it to Sarah. She photographed it, added it to the growing file of evidence. They're threatening you now, she said. That's good. How is that good? Because threats mean fear. And fear means guilt. Sarah turned her laptop to show them. Look, 3 other former palace employees have come forward in the last hour, all with similar stories. All saying they witnessed financial irregularities, but were told to stay quiet. The television cut to breaking news. A Scottish police unit had raided Highland House. Thomas Wright had been found, alive but clearly traumatized. The estate's staff was being questioned. Margaret pressed her hand to her mouth. He's alive. Thomas is actually alive. He's talking, Sarah said, reading updates on her screen. He's already given a preliminary statement, confirming everything in the documents. Names, dates, transactions. He's been held there for 2 weeks, but he kept detailed records before they took him. He has backup copies of everything. James felt something loosen in his chest. They'd done it. Against all odds, it actually exposed it. The television showed footage of police escorting officials from the Highland House property. Then it cut back to the studio, where a legal expert was explaining the implications. If these allegations prove true, we're looking at potential criminal charges against sitting members of the royal household. This could trigger a constitutional crisis unlike anything Britain has seen since the abdication. Margaret turned off the television. The silence felt heavy. What happens now? She asked. To us, I mean, when all of this settles? Investigation, Sarah said. Probably months of testimony, legal proceedings. They'll audit every document, interview everyone involved. You'll be protected witnesses, which means security, new identities, if necessary. New identities. Margaret laughed, but there was no humor in it. I spent 30 years building my life, my reputation, my place in that world. And now it's just gone. You did the right thing, James said. Did I? She looked at him. My daughter will be harassed. My grandchildren will grow up knowing their grandmother brought down members of the royal family. Thomas Wright will never work in government again. You'll never be a guard anywhere. We've destroyed our lives, James. For what? Justice? Truth? Yes. He said it simply. For exactly that. And you think that's enough?